Hi, welcome once again. If you have come this far, I think you have definitely found some benefit in going through the other videos that has covered various dimensions and aspects of the games that we do at Imarticus Game Studio. And this particular product is a newly launched product on behavioral training and simulations. The reason why I'm calling it as a framework again is we have used the same start on board authoring engine to build this particular game. There is a difference between the other products in this particular product in the sense this is more of a micro learning where the learning happens anywhere between 7 to 10 minutes, right? So each of the games range anywhere between 7 to 10 minutes, and you would be in a position to quickly finish a game and move ahead with the daily routine life. The other interesting aspects of the game is what we call as the Netflix of learning, where every month a new scenario is launched, and more importantly, employees get to understand and live these scenarios on a month on month basis. Today, as we speak, this particular game is launched in Aditya Birla Capital, and we have clients like Giant Eagle who is closely working with us to launch this products across the employees in the US. So let's dive a little bit more deeper to understand why behavioral simulation games are important and what is the important tenets of a behavioral simulation. I'm sure each of you with immense experience in working with various corporates do understand the most difficult aspect in any training is to really look at behavioral change, and we know that from our lives as well. Sorry. So if you're looking at behavioral change, unless and until somebody really wishes to do so, it's not going to happen that easily. And for that to happen, the only thing that any training program in my mind, and for that matter what research also tells us is, if there is a particular training module which helps an individual reason out things and brings about biases which are there in the subconscious level to a conscious level. So any behavioral change would happen the moment we bring about the predisposition, the biases, the prejudice, or the ways of looking at things which are at the subconscious level. And the moment we are able to bring it to a conscious level, it becomes much easier for individuals to automatically reason and reflect on those set of biases and prejudices, and that would impact a behavioral change. Traditionally, we have had multiple e-learning programs created in this particular model where we have gone ahead and explained concepts more from a theoretical standpoint. We would have given case studies. We have shown multiple videos of role plays that could happen, but that does not really impact individuals to a large extent because it doesn't impact a schema change. We would need to be aware of a little bit of a technicality and theory behind this because it's extremely important for you to present this to a customer. Any knowledge within an individual is stored as various schema within the brain for an individual to retrieve it, right? And this particular schema change is extremely important when a new knowledge addition happens or an existing knowledge within a schema gets modified. So if we are really looking at a behavioral change, and that's why it's extremely difficult for us to change a person's behavior with one single learning, unless and until it is a life learning which has created a huge impact and the person automatically reflects, reasons, and then makes those changes. So here what we are trying to achieve is to provide a scenario based learning environment where these prejudices and biases that exist within individuals are brought to the forefront through interactive learning tools and methodologies so that an individual is able to reason, reflect, and automatically become aware of their own prejudices. Again, one single scenario wouldn't really impact that particular change unless and until we have multiple scenarios and have constant reasoning and reflecting. This kind of a behavioral change is not going to be possible. So what we have done is we have followed the Netflix model of learning where we bring in scenarios of different topics, and we launch that at periodic intervals. So this periodicity could be determined by the client. It could be once in 15 days or once in a month, depending upon how often they would like to engage with their employees. And what would really transpire is that an individual who goes through this particular scenario would go ahead and then reflect, reason what has really transpired, right? So it's extremely important that we understand, this mechanism. And more importantly here, the reason, the schema change, happens when they are able to look at others' perspective. More often than not, what really impacts the schema change is for an individual to start looking at others' perspective, and this perspective, gives them a view to reflect on their own predispositions and perspective, right? So that's the theoretical background for this particular framework. So what we have done is to look at a story-based approach to understand others' perspective, because stories are extremely powerful. And these are micro sims because it would take, we can't really ask for more time from an individual who's working in a corporate space to spend on a monthly basis. So we are looking at a micro learning, concept. Every month a scenario gets launched, and the entire philosophy behind this particular game is what we call as an additive reasoning. Additive reasoning, simply put, is what a Sherlock Holmes would do. A Sherlock Holmes during a process of investigation would find object A, or he would find a clue A, and then he would find a clue C, and he, through a process of reasoning, would really understand how A and C are connected, right? It's not logical. It's not a mathematical logic where there is either an inductive or a deductive way of reasoning. This is more of an additive way of reasoning, which typically happens. Then the other important aspect of this particular game is that we will be able to customize scenarios which are relevant, to the organizational needs, where they would have their own set of repositories, and we would be able to bring about scenarios which are relevant to them. Just to give you an example, we would be able to use this particular game. The reason why I'm calling it as a behavioral simulation framework is that I could use it for different use cases. For example, it could be an event where a customer is calling the call center, and then they're raising a customer complaint, and the organization now has to look at this particular customer complaint and then solve for it. This is on customer centricity. The other thing could also be a safety mindset, where there is an accident that has happened in a plant, and there are certain human errors that took place. Now individuals will have to figure out as to why this has caused, and what is the lacuna in the mindset of an individual who was actually handling such a case within a plant setup. So there could be many such use cases. So there is a framework where we follow what is called as an investigative framework. First, there is an event that happens. This particular event could either be a negative event or a positive event. So once an event happens and the event is notified, there is only partial notification that takes place to the player, where now the player goes ahead and then starts investigating the events that have taken place. Based on their investigation, they deduce what could have been the root cause or problem that have triggered this particular event. Once the detection happens, they go in through a process of reflection, where they are able to identify exactly what happens. Then they start finding solutions by a process of confrontation. So it could be talking to the aggrieved party or the aggressor or person in concern, where they go ahead and then confront that particular individual in the game. Then they find possible resolutions. It could be, the case could be resolved, or it need not be resolved. But there is a learning in each of, the path that an individual has taken. So here what happens, rather than just presenting a particular case, the individual is involved in that particular case, travels through that entire journey, and is in a position to reason, reflect, deduce, find solutions, and confront individuals. So there is an active involvement that takes place during the entire process, and hence there is a learning that takes place. So this is the overall framework. This is how we have built the overall framework. So today, the Workplace Mystery platform is launched in Android and in SCOM packages. It is available on a WebGL on a browser mode for people to play, and we would soon be launching it in iOS as well. So any of you would be interested to play, you could reach out and we would be giving you the links and you would be able to play this particular game. So I've also highlighted a few, sample game titles that, we could, actually do. We are in the process of building, content for Posh. We have already content for diversity and inclusion. We could go ahead and then build other content on behind the, client requirement. So these are, ready-made modules that we would be in a position to sell it to the client on a license-based model. The reason, again, as I told you earlier, we are calling it a Netflix of learning, is because we would want to bring in that sense of inquisitiveness, because there is a scenario that launches every month and we would want the individuals to come back to the platform on a regular basis to actually, go through this particular training, program. And as I said earlier, the core game mechanic for this particular game is investigation and deduction, where they play the role of a Sherlock Holmes. The player or the learner plays the role of a Sherlock Holmes, and they go ahead and then investigates, they deduce, and they actually find resolutions to each of the problems. Like before, each of these games it could be authored using the authoring engine, and we would be in a position to publish many such games that could be used by various clients. So now let me just go ahead and then showcase the game and then show you how it looks like. So here is the diversity, equity, and inclusion version of the game. I click on play. There is an audio, which is there. So, this is a quick intro module which would set the tone, to the player as to what they could expect in the game, and they would quickly be taken to different, scenarios for which they could start playing. So as it mentions here, they involve in healthy conflict resolution, and they would have to make the workplace inclusive, equitable, and diverse. So that's the objective of this particular game. We would go ahead and then select our own set of avatars. Once we do an avatar selection, there are, multiple scenarios that could, get launched. So this is what I talked to you about, various scenarios. In the next 1 month, we would have the third scenarios added to this particular platform, and the entire platform or the scenario keeps adding up. So let me just go into the first scenario and then show you how the scenario actually plays. So what you're seeing right now in your screen is the event notification, where there is an event that has taken place and the player is notified that there is a problem, and they could actually come ahead and then talk. So this is what we call as a cutscene. Depending upon the scenario, our graphic designers would design these cutscenes, so that it becomes easier for us to scale up. Now, once the initial introduction is over, the player is taken to a office environment. So if you'd earlier remember, I was mentioning that we have 3D office spaces and 2D office spaces. This is what I'm calling as a 2D office space. So now if you see that there is a 2D character, there is an Aditya Birla Capital logo, and there are environment logos that is appearing in every place, which would make it have a look and feel like an Aditya Birla environment itself, right? So here now I could go ahead and then talk to individuals and interact. So my first notion is to go ahead and then talk to this individual out here, and I would have a conversation with this particular individual who would tell me partial information about what really happened. So depending upon the nature of scenario, we would be able to build in scenarios where people are telling you half truth, people are only giving them their perspective side of the story, so on and so forth, so that you could go ahead and then start understanding if they're telling lies, if they're telling the truth, and what is it that you would like to infer and deduce from each of these conversations. So, and we would also be able to make branch conversations here where you could visualize that there could be multiple endings to this entire conversation. The next question that you might ask is, where is the analytics and learning that could take place, right? So interestingly, what we could also do is to do a path analysis to see how the path of an individual actually has taken place throughout the entire game. So this is where I could now open what's called as a journey map, where I would need to deduce. So far what has taken place is for me to understand what transpired. Now I would need to deduce from the information that I have, right? So I could make wrong inferences, then the gameplay would be completely different. Or I could make certain right inferences, which would take me to a completely different, path. Once I've taken the right inference, it is revealing the next set of individual whom I would need to talk to, as well. So here I could now take the elevator, for example. So this is where, again, instead of a 3D space, we have completely moved into a 2D space. I could choose the floor that I would need to go, and I would need to now go ahead and then talk to different individuals, within the environment, for them to give, a lot of information that I could gather, right? So in this, model, we will be able to narrate different stories. We will be able to bring in multiple parts and then create different scenarios, which typically takes place, within a corporate setup. Uh, how is it different from existing approaches? You might say, hey, this looks familiar to other approaches that I've seen. The biggest difference is the overall deduction and the journey map aspect that you see, because at every stage in the process, you are actually, looking at deducing, what has taken place. So what I'm going to do right now is, after this particular, conversation, quickly show you feedback, from existing, clients who have gone through this, and the feedback that they have mentioned, right? So here, once, I go here, I have two deductions, that I could take. Right, and now I could go ahead and then speak to different individuals, and that individual would have, let us say, their own version. So I have, the aggrieved person who's going to call me, and I could talk to that particular person to understand, what had really transpired. So while this is also happening, what I would do is to quickly, show you, um, so let's look at the feedback of Aditya Birla Capital. So currently the game is rated, 4.68. We have close to about 73 people who have played this particular game. And now let's start looking at, the feedbacks, right? So concept was good, and need to share such incidents with every employee so that they won't discriminate, with whom and whom they are co-workers. Fantastic walkthrough of day-to-day challenges at workplace for women, and the way we can try to resolve. If it can't be resolved at employee end, we can always reach out to HR. Player treat all the employees in the same manner, right? It's, they say it's very good and easy to understand. It's good, it's great learning. uh, it was very meaningful and motivated. Storyline was good and informative, and we should think of things we talk that it might hurt someone. It was really nice interface, and the situation based questions. Right, the session was very good. We have to understand, what the employees say. Everyone is facing conflicts in office, even if I'm facing big time, but you have to stand up for yourself. So there is a lot of reflection that's happening, at the employee level, so that they are in a better position to reason and reflect. So there have been people who have come back after playing this particular game, who have told us that, hey, I used to commit the same kind of mistakes, but now that I have gone through this particular module, I'm going to be a little conscious, about what I say and what I do. So I hope, you have got a, view of the entire, game, a gist of the game. But what's, interesting about this entire framework is that it's so flexible that we would be in a position to narrate different scenarios and make the individual actually think through various actions which will lead to impact within the workplace, right? So more often than not, the biggest challenge is people understanding the difference between their intent and action. Their intent might be good, but their action might be bad, and hence it could cause certain, I would say, challenges in the workplace. And to overcome that, somebody needs to actually bring it to the forefront and be conscious, about what is really taking place, and then bring their prejudices and biases to the conscious forefront from the subconscious level. So there is a lot of psychological research that has gone behind this particular game, and it's a scalable framework. So what you're seeing ahead of you is a cutscene which plays out what has really taken place. So it's like watching a movie, but at the same time trying to influence the outcome of the movie, right? So if you have seen, I think there are very few movies like that, but here you are actually participating in that entire movie, and then determining the outcome of events, that really takes place. And it's far more graphical and far more interactive, way of doing it. So that's one of the reasons why we are calling it as a workplace mystery platform, where we would be able to bring in a lot of scenarios that take place in actual work environments. I hope this has given you a clarity on how this platform works. Thank you.